Paranormal. That cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Jason and JV.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Beyond Reality Radio.
And welcome, everybody. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes and JV Johnson, although Jason is off tonight, actually. I'll be here by myself. Well, not completely alone. I've got you. And I've got a great guest coming up in just a little bit. Michael Gellert will join us. He's a Jungian Psychoanalyst, and we'll be talking about his new book called The Divine Mind, Exploring the Psychological History of God's Inner Journey, which tells the epic story of the Abrahamic God's evolution and how it affects us as people. It's going to be an interesting discussion tonight. Tomorrow night, Todd Bonner will join us. He's the co-founder of Detroit Paranormal Expeditions. We're going to have him on in the first segment of the show. He'll be talking about their teams teaming up with the Atwater Brewery Company to make a paranormal-themed beer. This is right up my alley. This is going to be good. And then in the second part of the show, Dr. Lori Nadel will be with us. She's a best-selling author, and we'll be talking about how your sixth sense works. And then Thursday night's another best of program. I'll be on the road. Jason will still be on the road, but we'll return Monday night with Douglas Stearns, who's been on the show before. We'll be talking about the pyramids of Giza and harmonic tuning and so many things that affect us that we don't even realize are going on as we eat, sleep, live our lives, whatever it happens to be. The phone number is 844-687-7669. You should jot that down and join our conversation later in the program when we open up the phone lines. And we may or may not have time tonight to get back to our psychic experiment. If we do, it'll be in the later half of the program. A couple other things to mention. The Beyond Reality Radio coffee mugs, the official Beyond Reality Radio coffee mugs, are available for purchase. If you go to the Beyond Reality Radio website, it's just beyondrealityradio.com. You'll see the coffee mug pictured there. Click on it. You can grab it. Domestic shipping is included. If you want to order from overseas, just need to contact us. And one other thing that I want to mention that's kind of important, and it's coming up quickly, it's the Scaricon convention in Framingham, Massachusetts. It's a great time that'll feature a whole bunch of paranormal and horror and pop culture celebrities, plus parties, movie premieres and screenings, panel discussions, question and answer sessions, a whole bunch of great stuff, a lot of great vendors. It's all happening June 16th and 17th in Framingham, Massachusetts. And if you wanted more information about that, you just go to scaricon.com for information about the Scaricon event. So great to see everybody in chat. Great to see everybody in the YouTube stream. It's another way that we're trying to get the show out to people, and it seems to be working really well. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll bring our guest in. Michael Gellert will join us. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV. Don't go away. A lot more coming up.
in particular. One was the natural religious school upbringing that most of us have, whatever denomination or religion we're in. There, I had a near-death experience that opened my eyes to a greater reality that is within us, but also around us and beyond us. And when I left, I was going to come back to Canada, where I'm from, and finish my studies. At the time, they were in pre-law. But after that experience in India, I was fascinated by what I had seen there and what I had seen about this dimension that we have access to. And I was just interested in studying comparative religion. So I studied comparative religion in college, and from there I went on to graduate school in religious studies, and much later eventually went to Japan, where I trained with a Zen master for 2 years. And eventually I came back and became a psychotherapist. I was a college teacher first, and then I became a clinical therapist, and finally became a Jungian analyst, which is what I've been doing the last 25 years.
It's probably worth getting into a little bit of who Carl Jung was and why that's important to what you're talking about.
Sure. Well, Carl Jung was one of Sigmund Freud's students, and he was a pioneer in the exploration of the unconscious mind. We knew even at the turn of the 20th century, the 19th century becoming the 20th century, that the waking mind represents perhaps 10% of the human potential that exists in all of us and the rest of our mind. And that we only use that 10%, and that other 90%, if you could imagine it, it's like a boat on an ocean, a small vessel, and that is our ego or our ego consciousness. And the rest of this vast ocean underneath it is the unconscious. All the pioneers of early psychiatry and psychoanalysis thought this way. Jung broke away from Freud because he felt that Freud's approach was narrow insofar as it defined the human impulse, the main impulse towards human development, as the sexual instincts. Everybody knows about his Oedipus complex theory and so forth. And Jung felt that it's not sexuality that drives human behavior only. There's another principle that is even greater, and that takes over for most of us in the second half of life. Freud was really examining our childhood experiences and how it shaped the first half of our lives. Jung was more interested in the second half, and rather than sexuality, he thought that the drive or the inspiration, the quest for wholeness, for religious meaning, is the most important factor that shapes human development. So naturally, I was drawn toward Jung. I had a dream one night that I tried to understand by reading Freud, and I got some insight on it. But when I read Jung, I realized, this man knows something about the religious nature of the unconscious mind. And that is what Jung is largely known for.
So when you say pursuit for religious wholeness later in life, are we talking about religion itself, or are we talking about more of a purpose, a divine, if you will, purpose for each of us individually?
Yes, more the latter, what you said. Jung was not at all adverse to traditional religion, and in fact, he drew an awful lot from mythology and symbols and religious stories in all the world religions. He was interested in Western religion and all the Eastern religions as well. But he was most concerned with how the themes of the different religions come up individually in our own personal experiences and how we could build on those, how we could interpret their implications for our personal lives. So he was interested in organized traditional religion, but really mostly its implications for our own personal journeys.
When you traveled the world, particularly when you were 19 years old and you went to India, how did that change your overall perspective on everything you had learned up until that point?
That's a good question. Well, I realized that I had been living like most of us in the West in a much smaller box or room, which I thought at the time, or I assumed without even thinking, was the total picture of everything we see and everything we know. And what India did was it sort of dropped the floor out of under my feet, and I realized there's a much wider, bigger room that conventional reality, as important as it is for us to master its challenges and to live a responsible, conventional life in society where we, are citizens who are responsible and make a good contribution to others. But way beyond this, there's a whole world, an inner world that's within us, but as I mentioned before, also beyond us. And what that experience in India did, as near-death experiences do, and altered states of consciousness, and the full variety of experiences people have, from meditation, from art, from music, even from sports. You read a lot about athletes getting into the zone, and they have a kind of religious experience while they're on the basketball court or out on the golf course that enables them to excel. And the aim or purpose of the religious experience is not to score basketball, hoops and to make a lot of money. It's really about developing the potential in ourselves, and our achievements then that are a kind of a reflection of that. They're an expression of it. That's how that experience and those kinds of experiences which many people have had and don't even sometimes know it. That's how it kind of reorients us. It gives us a compass to a much larger horizon.
We've only got about a minute here before we have to jump into break. So I just want to ask you about the experience of hitchhiking. Where did you start from on your way to India that you hitchhiked?
Started in Amsterdam. Flew to Amsterdam from Canada. Went down through Germany and through the rest of the countries on the way to Turkey. And in Istanbul, a friend and I decided that we're going to hitchhike through Asia Minor and see the country that way. He had already hitchhiked once before overland, and he was going now again to India, and he wanted to go a little further to the Far East. He was actually wanting to go to Malaysia. And we hitchhiked through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then down into India. Eventually, he went on to Malaysia. I stayed in India. I went to Nepal. We're still good friends today. In those days, you could travel in those countries freely. It was the 1970s. It was the Shah was in charge of Iran, and there was no Afghani wars at the moment. The Soviets hadn't gone in there yet. There were dangers, of course, because these are rough country. It's a rough countryside, and we were, after all, at the beginning of the winter when we did this. But it was part of the cultural adventure. I was a younger person. I was a kid, and this was my coming of age adventure.
Well, it certainly
Or at
sounds
least one among them.
Yeah, and it sort of sounds like it was a life-changing one as well. We're talking with Michael Gellert. He's a Jungian psychoanalyst. He's got a new book out. It's called The Divine Mind, Exploring the Psychological History of God's Inner Journey. He's got several other books to his credit as well. You can see them all if you go to michaelgellert.com, and I encourage you to do that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. We'll get into the book in a little more detail. The phone number is 844-687-7669. We'll take your phone calls later in the program. We also encourage you to stop by the website, beyondrealityradio.com, and check out the Scaricon website. That's an event coming up in June that if you have any interest in paranormal or horror or pop culture celebrities, movies, and vendors, it's all going to be at Scaricon, and that website is scaricon.com. I'm JV. This is Beyond Reality Radio. Don't go away. We have a lot more coming up.
You can go to 1,000 so-called haunted locations.
The last few times we've been hearing a baby cry in the house. There's no babies. TV's not on, and it's in the room.
First of all, I want to tell Jason I've been a huge fan of the show. Thanks for taking my call. I didn't think I'd be able to get through.
It's not just radio, it's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason Hawes and J.D. Johnson. Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm J.V. Johnson. Jason Hawes is off tonight. He'll be off the rest of the week, actually. He's out doing some stuff, some important stuff, too. He'll tell you all about it when he gets back. Tomorrow night on the program, we've got Todd Bonner joining us in the first part of the show to talk about his paranormal team's work with a brewery called the Atwater Brewery. And they're making a paranormal-themed beer called Hello from the Other Side. Again, I think we all need samples, right? If he's going to be on the show to talk about it, everybody should get samples. And then later in the program tomorrow night, Dr. Lori Nadel will join us to talk about your sixth sense. She's written about it. She's got information about it. How does the sixth sense work for people? How do you make it work? That'll be in the later half of tomorrow night's show. Thursday's a best of. Friday's always a best of. And then Monday, Douglas Stearns will come back onto the program to talk about the mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Giza, also standardized and cymatics tuning, and how it all inspired his sci-fi series called Harmonic Wars. If you remember that conversation, it was fascinating. We'll get into more depth with Douglas Stearns on Monday night. Our telephone number is 844-687-7669. Jot that down to be part of our discussion a little bit later. Tonight, we're talking with Michael Gellert, and we're talking about his book called The Divine Mind, Exploring the Psychological History of God's Inner Journey. His website is michaelgellert.com. You're going to want to check that out to get information about that book and all of the other work that Michael has done. And again, Michael, thanks for being with us. I wanted to ask you about this particular book. Now, you said you were raised in the Jewish tradition, and you went and explored the world, basically, and started to recognize similarities and kind of convergences among these different religions. And you decided to look at the Abrahamic religion specifically for this book, The Divine Mind. Tell us what that means. When we say the Abrahamic religions, we're talking about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But tell us how those three relate.
Well, all the Abrahamic religions, those three, which are the major ones, and then there's a few minor ones, which, we've heard about, but a lot of people aren't aware of. The Samaritans, whom we read about in the New Testament, and the Baha'i faith, these are also Abrahamic traditions. Basically, the Abrahamic religions all have the same source. They draw their teachings from the experience that Abraham had with the God of the Hebrew Bible, also referred to commonly as the Old Testament. It is out of that initial encounter with that first patriarch, Abraham, that all the Abrahamic religions evolved.
And again, we're talking about three of the world's major religions and then some others. And can you kind of guide us through what happened after that divergence? How do the three differ so much?
Well, they all agree on the Hebrew Bible. Muslims, Christians, and Jews all agree that the Hebrew Bible is the foundation of their own revelations. They diverge, firstly, with Christianity, which, as everybody knows, was founded by Jesus in particular, but really soldiered, so to speak, by St. Paul. Paul is the one who took Jesus's insights and personal experience and made a religion out of it. Jesus actually never referred to Christianity. That was not a word in his vocabulary. Christianity formed in the 1st century of AD after Christ, and it went off on its own. It developed its own lineage, and it broke away from Judaism. It initially was a Jewish sect. Islam came again quite a bit later in the 6th century in another part of the Far East in Arabia, and was founded by Muhammad, who also had a revelation of God. So the 3 different revelations have different theologies, different experiences, different ways of explaining the divine human drama or connection. Judaism went on after the rise of Christianity, or around the same time as Christianity, if not, in fact, a little earlier, and developed an additional sacred text, which is a very huge collection of volumes known as the Talmud. Christianity developed the New Testament. That was finally sealed. It was redacted and sealed and made into a book in the 4th century. And Muhammad wrote down his revelation, which came from Allah. Allah is the Muslim name for the Father in Christianity, or Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible, God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that was conveyed to him through the angel Gabriel. Muhammad had his revelation revealed to him by way of what Gabriel showed him. All of these traditions, once they diverge, develop, so to speak, different personalities. But they all share the same God. And what the divine mind tries to show is how this God evolved, how the experience of him is the same with all the traditions in the beginning, with the Hebrew Bible, and then much later in the final ending centuries that we are now in, ending after the Middle Ages. So you get 3 basic phases of God's development when you look at all 3 Abrahamic religions together. You get the Hebrew Bible as the first phase. Then you get the Talmud, which I mentioned is that second sacred text of Judaism, the New Testament, the Quran, and a body of religious literature known as the Gnostic literature, which basically were the Jewish and Christian early mystics. Some of these were deemed, particularly in Christianity, as heretics, but they had authentic experiences as well, and this added to our understanding of God's evolution, because through these 3 stages, God is evolving. And in the 3rd stage, we come to the mystics, the Jewish mystics, also known as the Hasidim and the Kabbalists, the Christian mystics, like St. John of the Cross, St. Francis of Assisi, and the Muslim mystics, known as the Sufis. And here, as the religions diverged from each other in the second period after the Hebrew Bible, with the mystics, starting in the Middle Ages, the traditions begin to come closer because their experience of God is identical. So the Muslim mystics, the Jewish and Christian mystics, they had a vision of God which was, if you were to take their quotations and remove the names of the authors of those quotations from the 3 different traditions, you wouldn't know which tradition was speaking. So identical are their experiences. And with all of these, God transforms from the biblical patriarch, who was a war god, he was a creator God, he was a lawgiver, he gave the law to Moses. He transforms then in the second phase and becomes more humanitarian, more humanistic, more loving, more wise. And then in the third phase with the mystics, he becomes a mystical God. And there, God is discovered not outside of us, as in the first two phases, but inside of us. In fact, the mystics will say, I am God, and so are you. We are all God, and God is in us, around us, between us. It's a completely different experience. And what the divine mind shows is the progression and unfolding of that experience.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but what has that evolution, the evolution of God as you just described it, done to humanity's evolution? I don't mean that in a biological sense. I mean in a more of a cultural sense.
Yes. Definitely, in terms of the height of religion, when I speak of the height of religion, I mean the visionaries and the seers and the mystics, the people who are interested in experiencing God, less interested in the conventions of the church or the synagogue or the mosque, more interested in the inner workings that we all have access to that leads us to God. That evolution, culturally and psychologically, as God is evolving and becoming less identified as a person or an object, how Michelangelo painted God as an old man with a white flowing beard on the Sistine Chapel. That begins to completely disappear as you get into the inner workings of the mystics. And the mystics experience God as their own consciousness. So those visionaries and seers and mystics had a completely different culture and understanding of God that transcended most of the social conventions. Unfortunately, the mystics and the seers and the visionaries were really a small percentage of the population. The majority of the people up to the Middle Ages, and even in the Middle Ages, right up to modern times, don't really look into this dimension. People go to church on Sunday, or temple or synagogue on Saturday. Muslims celebrate Ramadan. These are very much social forms. The majority of the people in our religions follow this and don't even know about this hidden dimension that the mystics eventually tapped into. So in one way, it was a profound change because they're the leading edge of civilization, the mystics. Their psychology back in the Middle Ages was as sophisticated as modern psychology today, and if not in certain ways more sophisticated. We have yet to catch up to them. They were a minority tradition, and they still are.
We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about Michael's book called The Divine Mind, Exploring the Psychological Path of God's Inner Journey. It's Beyond Reality Radio. The telephone number, and we will open up phone lines next hour, is 844-687-7669. Don't go away. We have a whole lot more coming up. Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV Johnson. Thanks for joining me tonight. We appreciate you being along. Also very appreciative of all the great radio stations that carry the program around the country. That list continues to grow. We've got some new stations we're actually going to be announcing pretty soon, so we're excited about that. Jason will be back with me next week. Tomorrow night, we've got Todd Bonner and Dr. Lori Nadel joining us on the program. Thursday is a best of. Friday is always a best of. And Monday, Douglas Stearns will be here live with us. We're looking forward to that. Tonight, we're talking with Michael Gellert about his book, The Divine Mind, exploring the psychological path of God's inner journey. And Michael, this is a kind of a short segment here. But can I ask you, if you don't mind, do you consider yourself a religious person, or did you write this from more of an academic standpoint?
No, I'm writing mostly from an experiential standpoint. The thing I'm trying to show, it lends itself to academic interests. If you're interested in the history of religion, there's a fair amount of that. In a way, this is, as you mentioned with the subtitle of the book, it is a psychological history. But it's really experientially based. And what I'm trying to show in that history is that God's journey parallels our own, as you asked about before, our own evolution, culturally and mostly in terms of our consciousness. In this journey, there's a shift where God is no longer experienced outside us as a kind of super person or super being, a father in heaven, shifts to an inner experience, an experience of God in and as our own consciousness. Jesus, said this very well and started this in Christianity at the very inception of Christianity when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." So it is mostly a book that is trying to convey to people that since the mystics have mapped this consciousness of God that is available to all of us, we're all able to access it. Not only mystics and religious geniuses like the saints and scholars of religion, but everyday people can have this because we all share the same consciousness. God is in the psyche of everyone. And that's what I'm really trying to get across to folks.
We have a lot more to talk about on the other side of the top of the hour. But you do mention and describe the book as being the story being told of God from his experiences, his thoughts, and his feelings. I'm assuming that what you mean is through how those thoughts, feelings, and experiences are explained in the books that you've mentioned, in the Hebrew Bible, in the New Testament, in all of the other reference works that you've talked about.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It's impossible to tell God apart from the psyche that perceives him. Our psyche is the only way we can know anything at all. And God is filtered through our own perception, just like everything else in life is. So nobody, of course, knows for sure exactly what goes on in the heart and mind of God. But if you read the scriptures and the writings of that came in the period after the Hebrew Bible, and then the writings, the autobiographical writings of the mystics of all three Abrahamic traditions, you see that underneath the external events that are attributed to God, that he's also undergoing a certain transformation. He himself is evolving according to what the traditions tell us. Now, of course, it's impossible to tell, is he actually evolving, or is our projection of him evolving?
Right.
It's a tricky question, and it remains ultimately a mystery.
And we'll get into more of that on the other side of the top of the hour break here. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV Johnson. Don't go away. A lot more to come.
paranormal that cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Jason and JV.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Can't handle the truth.
Beyond reality radio.
Welcome. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV Johnson. Jason is not working tonight. He's actually got the week off, so we'll be back with Jason next week. We've got a great show tonight, though. We're talking with Michael Gellert about his book, The Divine Mind, Exploring Psychological History of God's Inner Journey. We'll get back to that discussion in just a few moments. Tomorrow night, Todd Bonner will join us. He's the co-founder of Detroit Paranormal Expeditions. His paranormal group is teaming up with the Atwater Brewery. They are going to make a paranormal-themed beer called Hello from the Other Side. Jason and I have talked about making Taps beer on tap, right? That would make a lot of sense. But I'm anxious to hear about this one, and I want to actually try some. And then later in the program, Dr. Lori Nadel will join us to talk about ESP, your sixth sense, how it works. Thursday night is a best of program. Monday, actually next week, at least Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got a bunch of really great returning guests. Douglas Stearns will be back with us Monday night to talk about the Great Pyramid of Giza. And Carolyn Clapper, who is an evidential psychic medium and a medical intuitive, will be talking to us about her gifts, how she got these gifts or recognized them and what she does with them. And then Wednesday night, Linda Godfrey, who's an author and an investigator, will be talking about upright canines like dogmen across America, these cryptids that look like werewolves or other dogmen type creatures, and the theories behind those and other cryptid creatures. That'll be Wednesday night's program. The telephone number is 844-687-7669 if you'd like to call and be part of our discussion. A couple of other things to remind you of. The Beyond Reality Radio official coffee mugs are available. Yeah. Just go to the website, beyondrealityradio.com. There's a picture of the mug there. You can click on it. It's very stylish. I'll hold it up for the video chat here so they can all see it. See this? This is the official Beyond Reality. Yeah, I know mine has pens in it, but I've got others that I drink out of. This is just the one with the pens. It's okay. And then you can also check out the Scaricon website. It's just scaricon.com. That's a great event that's coming up in June in the Boston area. It's Framingham, Massachusetts. There are a number of celebrities that'll be there, film screenings and premieres, panel discussions, vendors. It's a great time. Framingham, Massachusetts. That's called Scaricon. You should check that out as well. Let's go back to our guest line and bring Michael Gellert back in. His book is called The Divine Mind, and his website is michaelgellert.com. Michael, you've been writing for a while. You've got a number of books to your credit. Before we get back into discussing The Divine Mind, tell us a little bit about some of the other books you've got and that people might see if they go to your website.
Sure. My first book is called Modern Mysticism. And that's an exploration of everything we've been talking about, but not from a historical point of view, really from a psychological point of view. And it shows how the human psyche, or the unconscious mind in particular, is the vessel through which mystical and other kinds of religious experiences come. This includes paranormal phenomena, UFO encounters, what Jung called synchronicity or unusual coincidences, experiences of contacts with the afterlife through deceased loved ones. And it's a very much a book that draws on the experiences of well-known people whom one would not ordinarily think had a religious experience, but they did. And this includes, on the one end of the spectrum, actors and rock stars, and on the other end, it includes military figures and great statesmen like Winston Churchill and so forth. My second book is a bit of a shift from that. It's called The Fate of America, and it's actually going to be re-released pretty soon. It's a look at, all my books have this underlying theme, which is the unconscious mind. And I'm looking at the unconscious mind and its various manifestations and different contexts that it surfaces in. And The Fate of America is really a look at the collective unconscious of the United States of America. It looks at the national character of this country, starting with the early days of the Pilgrims and right up until modern times. It's very much a historical book, and it raises the question of what Americans need to be thinking about in order to ensure that the country continues to evolve and resolve its current difficulties, which is a whole other conversation, of course. But it's a book really about our culture. The book after that is more of a personal book. It has a lot of my patients' stories in it and the ways I worked with them on their dreams. It's called The Way of the Small, Why Less is Truly More. And it argues that we in America are very oriented toward bigness, having a bigger house and a bigger car and a better vacation and more money. And that really the opposite is where happiness is found, in living within our means, in finding joy in the small events of life, in cultivating the ability to evolve in quiet ways. It's a small book, and it draws on the wisdom of the ancients, but in a modern context. And then there came this book, which we've been talking about tonight, The Divine Mind.
A lot of great stuff there. And again, the website is michaelgellert.com. Let's go back to talking about the divine mind. And I want to kind of take you back to the beginning here, because you discussed the evolution of God, or maybe the evolution of the interpretation of God. But in the beginning, not to use a pun here, you talk about God as being a tormented and divided God. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you read the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, you will see that God behaves in very human ways, and he feels emotions that he expresses, and they're very human-like emotions. It starts in the book of Genesis, where he has a huge emotional reaction to Adam and Eve having bitten the forbidden fruit of the tree of good and evil knowledge. It progresses on to Noah's flood, where God has second thoughts, the Bible tells us, about having created the earth and humanity, and he tries to wipe them all out. He does wipe them all out, except for one family, Noah and his family. And then right through the Hebrew Bible, which is a very big collection of books that take a span of history starting around 1800 BC to about 200 BC, so 1600 years of Israelite history. And it includes the encounter with the prophets, who are screaming at the top of their voices that God is suffering because the people are not worshiping him in an appropriate way, and that they are following idolatry and worshiping idols of other religions. And you could see that when God speaks through the prophets, he's very hurt. He's very alarmed at what's happening, and he's behaving like a lover who's been jilted. And these are very human kinds of, sentiments and feelings. and his rage is beyond human. If you count the amount of genocides that the Israelites committed at God's orders, God's commands, you come to about 70 to 80 separate acts of what we today would call genocide. This is not the way most of us today like to think about God. God here is not only very human, he is very human in particularly dark ways as well as loving, positive ways. He is both a destroyer and a creator.
You also talk about a mystical framework for understanding the problem of evil. Let's talk about that for a minute. What do you mean by when you talk about evil as being a problem? And we all think evil is a problem in the world, but is that what you mean? Or are you talking about how evil fits into the whole scheme of God?
Both. Both. We don't immediately experience evil today as the dark side of God. In the Hebrew Bible, as well as the New Testament, the dark side of God was personified in the form of Satan. But it's very clear, it was very clear to the ancient Israelites that Satan and God were two sides of the same being. I talk about that in the Divine Mind, and I basically cite the scripture, the places in scripture where the reader can go and verify it for themselves. But today, we live in a secular society, and we don't really connect evil actions and historical atrocities like the genocide in during the Holocaust and the genocides we see going on today. Even right now in Syria on the news, the acts of chemical warfare against the Syrian people by their own government, many would say is evil. We don't connect that today immediately and directly with God, but we have to have a way to understand this side of ourselves. We are created in God's image, the book of Genesis tells us, and that means we also have his dark side. So to understand evil, we really need to have a deeper understanding of human nature with its dark capacities. And we are subject to evil just as easily as we are subject to love and, great empathy and good deeds for others. So both of those dimensions is what I look at in that chapter on evil.
Before we went to the top of the hour break, you were explaining and talking about the three phases of God, kind of an evolution, if you will. And you had posed the question as to whether it was God that was evolving or it was those who were interpreting God that were evolving. Did you come to any conclusions in the book regarding that, or is that still an open question?
It's an open question, as all of these mysteries are. It's very clear that, at least from the Western point of view, the Easterners have a very different orientation in this. But according to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, God created the universe, and that already is a change. Because according to those traditions, before creation, God was all by himself. In all the world religions, and in the history of the world's religions, including the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians and so on, there wasn't a monotheistic God. There were many gods. It was a polytheistic pantheon. And the gods always, before creation, had each other to relate to and to, be supported by. With the Abrahamic religions, God is the only force in the universe, and he has nobody to mirror him, to reflect him back to himself, to talk with. And ostensibly, God created creation. It is hinted at in Scripture because he was lonely. And to then make a universe and to create human beings, that already is a change. And it seems that the creatures change God just as God changes his creatures, us. We have an impact on his development, which never developed because when he was all alone before creation, there was nothing to change. He was changeless. He was eternal. But once he made creation and he himself entered it as a participant, he himself begins to change. Now, that's what Scripture tells us, is how it portrays God. Again, it's a mystery as to how much of this is objective and how much of it is our interpretation, our projections. Carl Jung, whom we talked about earlier, suggested that the projections allude to a reality beyond themselves that has a certain objectivity. It may not be exactly the way Scripture portrays God, but we have to wonder what realities lie behind our projections, because the projections themselves historically have such a power. They're going on for thousands of years, and they grip our imagination in very dramatic ways. So it's a mystery, and it's really left up to the individual who reads the Scriptures to decide for themselves, is this God, or is this also our own psyches that is perceiving God in this way?
We're talking with Michael Gellert, and we're going to continue our conversation on the other side of the break. We went a little bit long here, so we're going to have some quick back-to-back breaks. But don't go away. We have a lot more to talk about. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV Johnson. All right, don't go away. It's Beyond Reality Radio. We'll have more with our guest, Michael Gellert, talking about his book, The Divine Mind. That's coming up. Visit his website, by the way, michaelgellert.com. It's Beyond Reality Radio. More on the other side of the break. Don't go away.
I just want to say that you guys do a great job. It's very interesting listening to you guys.
And I have to say quickly that you guys run a wonderful show.
Only on Beyond Reality Radio with Jason Hall. All right, welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason is off this week. It's JV Johnson. Glad to have everybody along with us. I don't think we're going to have time to do our psychic experiment tonight, but we will get to that either tomorrow night or we'll have to do it next week. Either way, we have a lot of fun with that, so we'll continue with that soon. Anyway, tomorrow night we've got a couple of guests. Todd Bonner from the Detroit Paranormal Expeditions. We'll talk about his work teaming up with the Atwater Brewery to make a paranormal-themed beer. Paranormal themed beer. You heard me right. It's called Hello from the Other Side. I'm not sure where it's going to be available, but we'll have a discussion about it tomorrow night. And Dr. Lori Nadel will join us in the later part of the program to talk about how your sixth sense works. Thursday night is a best of, Friday is a best of, and then Monday night, Douglas Stearns, who is a returning guest, will come to talk about the Great Pyramid of Giza. A lot of great stuff coming up on the show tonight. We're having a fantastic and a fascinating conversation with Michael Gellert. You should check out his website. It's michaelgellert.com. And the book we're talking about is The Divine Mind, exploring the psychological path of God's inner journey. Michael, we've been talking about a lot. And you talk about the evolution of God, again, whether it's an actual evolution of God himself or how God is perceived. But one thing I've noticed, more often when we talk about God or religion on this program, we have people talking about it in a much more nebulous or less defined sense. God is everywhere. God is the trees. God is the earth. God is whatever. And a lot of people are redefining their perception of God and religion to that kind of a definition. Is that part of this evolution as well? Is that part of what we're talking about here?
Yes. With the mystics, the definition of God broadens. It opens up and becomes all-inclusive. You know, in the biblical idea of creation, God kind of creates the universe outside of himself. But with the mystics, the process of creation is seen as something occurring within God himself. It's a huge shift. And that is what you're describing going on today is actually a spin-off that was made possible because it had already been achieved in Western consciousness with the mystics. So this kind of modern pantheism is a broader view. The mystics weren't exactly pantheists. They were something that's called panentheists. So they still believed in God as a transcendent being beyond creation, but creation was a manifestation of God and a place in which we could become one with God. So you didn't get the fall of creation story the way it happened in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian fall of man. The mystics kind of heal that split. So it both has elements of God in tradition and from ancient times, but it's also this broader vision that you're alluding to.
When we go to church, and as many of us do, and we are taught what God's words are through the Bible, if you're a Christian, is that subject to the same kind of change that we are talking about here as in the perception of what we believe God is? Are we going to see an evolution there as well?
Well, that really depends on the the parishioner, the priest, or the rabbi. It depends on the dogma or official teachings of the particular church or tradition that they belong to. It depends on the congregation. Do they want to go toward that kind of mystical understanding of God, or is it too frightening for them? Do they wish to preserve the traditional way of understanding God as being up in the heavens and we're down here and we pray to God as if he is something outside of us? That kind of ebbs and flows in society. We now have, for example, a pope who is very in tune with the mystics. He named himself after St. Francis of Assisi, who was a great Italian Catholic mystic. Not all the popes do that. You also had an opening up of the church back in the 60s, I believe, with Pope Paul or John the 23rd, John the 23rd, and that was a opening up to the mystical flavor of Christianity as well. But you see that in subsequent papacies, the religion reverts back to the formal dogmatic understanding that's been in place for centuries. So, that's a question that history will give us the answer to. Will the religions, as they're practiced in society, will they evolve as well as the mystics did, in the same way that the mystics did?
So as our time starts to run short here, when people pick up your book, The Divine Mind, what do you hope they walk away with after reading it?
Well, I hope they walk away with an understanding that God ultimately is not something abstract and out there, something that only the prophets in the Bible or the mystics in the Middle Ages encountered, but that it is something that all of us can encounter. We get glimpses of the divine every night when we have dreams. The characters in our dreams behave in unpredictable ways. Magical things can happen, and the dreams are loaded with meaning. They're symbolic, but they're very meaningful. And symbols are like onions. You can just peel them one layer after another, and you keep coming down to the essence in the kernel of the onion. In the same way, the human psyche has its own layers. We have the conscious mind, and below that we have many layers of the unconscious. And as we peel those open, our ultimate nature of who we always were and will eternally be, our consciousness, really becomes more available to us in a crystallized way. So I hope that the reader goes away with an appreciation of that, and that it sparks their curiosity to explore more, and in a practical way, perhaps, as well as a reading experience.
In the few minutes we have left, I want to touch on one or maybe two of your other books. Now, you gave us a nice list of the works that you've completed that are listed on your website. One of them, The Fate of America, is very, very intriguing to me. Can you tell us a little bit more about that book?
Yeah, sure. Basically, that book is looking at a certain characteristic of the American experience through the centuries and the American national character. And that ingredient, that element, is the American fascination with heroism. Americans idolize heroes and see themselves as a heroic people, starting with the journey of the pilgrims from Europe over the Atlantic, and then the founding of the original settlements in the wild frontier. Going right up to modern times, there have been all kinds of heroes. Our heroes were the founding fathers to start with. Then there came the frontiersmen, or as they are popularly known as the cowboys. But then we, in modern times, developed other kinds of heroes, from the barons of industry to the athletes we worship all the time in our love of sports, to the astronauts, to soldiers. America has been a country that has had a very diverse and sometimes too prevalent military history. We have a heroic image of ourselves and our role and our responsibility in the world. And sometimes that gets us into trouble. This heroic ideal, however strong it has been through the centuries since the founding of America, in the last 60 or so years has come into a crisis. We're kind of undergoing today a heroic identity crisis. We no longer know exactly what it means to be a hero in modern times. The world is changing, and we don't live in the straightforward, simple good versus evil heroism of the old days, where you choose one and it's obvious who the enemy is. Today, the world, as we all see, is globally interdependent in very complicated ways. And America's mission, as it's conceived it, has not stood up in the way it did in simpler times. And the heroic ideal also needs to develop according to the demands of the world. And what the book really does is it examines the ways we've gotten derailed from our heroism in modern times, and how we need to get back to the original roots of it, particularly as the founders envisioned the future and purpose of America and the world. We need to get back to it, but in a modern way. Not by going back and repeating the past, but by applying the wisdom of the past, of our founders, of people like Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson and John Adams, and apply it in a modern context that gives us a renewed sense of heroism and our purpose in the world.
We've been a little bit negligent with our phone lines here. I do want to at least grab one listener call before we let you go. This is Ed calling in from North Carolina. Hey, Ed, welcome to the program.
Yeah, I just want to say I really enjoyed Michael Gellert. I want to congratulate you on making things, getting to the core and making things that I could easily understand. You remind me of Joseph Campbell, and when you delineated that Carl Jung was the true master of dreams and so forth, you kind of won me over there. I really enjoyed the clarity that you're able to express yourself and help us understand a lot of these different spiritual thinkings and reality and so forth, other aspects.
Well, thank you very much for your good words. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm glad it's helpful.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for the call and the comments. Very much appreciated. So, Michael, what's next for you? You don't stop working. So what's next on the docket for you?
Well, I have another book that's in the works, and another one that is my agent is shopping around to the publishers. And as I mentioned, The Fate of America will be re-released in the next months with a appendix on the end that brings it up, because I wrote the book in the 1990s, and it was actually published on 9/11. So what the new edition will offer is an update that brings the book up to modern times and to the Trump era that we're in. So that's pretty much what's on my table right now.
And also, I mean, you do more than just write. You also have a practice. I know on your website, people can reach out to you there. What else do you offer on the website?
There's excerpts from the different books. There are some lectures that have been transcribed on various topics, mysticism, religion, things to do with American history as well, that are not in the books. There's a docket of different things people can read, and they're free to go and explore it. There's also contact, as you mentioned, contact information. So if people have questions, I'm happy to receive those and answer those as best as I can.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll have a chance to bring you back onto the program as you do more work that we can talk about.
Thank you very much, JV, and I appreciate your very thoughtful questions that helped me to talk about the book in a way that hopefully is relevant.
Well, it's been fantastic. Again, the book is called The Divine Mind, Exploring the Psychological Path of God's Inner Journey, authored by our guest tonight, Michael Gellert. You can go to his website, michaelgellert.com. Check out that book, plus his other work. There's a lot of great information there. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and wrap things up. It's Beyond Reality Radio. I'm JV Johnson. Thanks so much for being with me.
Won't you come see about me? I'll be alone, dancing, you know it, baby. Tell me your troubles and doubts, giving me everything inside and out. And love strange, so real in the dark. Think of the tender things that we were working on. Slow change.
Seriously, what happened to chat? The few minutes I look away, and we're talking about thongs. What the heck's going on in here? Yeah, she hurt her sleeve. Yes. Doug, you're anything but innocent. I know that. Exactly, Toey. We'll work on the tank top.
When the light gets into your heart, baby, don't you forget about me. Don't you forget about me. Will you stand above me? Look my way, you never love me. Rain keeps falling, rain.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Great show tonight. We appreciate Michael Gellert for being with us during the whole show. It's a great program. Tomorrow night, a couple of guests. Todd Bonner will start off the program, and then Dr. Lori Nadel will join us to talk about the Sixth Sense, ESP, if you will. That's later in the program. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason's off tonight. He'll be off for the rest of the week. I'm JV Johnson. Join me tomorrow night. I'll be here with you.
Try to pretend it's my feeling will win in the end. I won't harm you or touch your defenses, vanity, insecurity. Don't you forget about me. I'll be alone, dancing, you know it, baby.